What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Forever Green Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, and today I will be grading every single team at the World Cup, the 2026 World Cup, all 48 teams. I will be grading all of their group stage performances, so let's get right into it. I'm going to go group by group here and just run down all the teams and basically give out every single grade for each team and say a little bit about why I believe that team deserves each grade. We're going A through F, just like school, A plus. I don't have any F minuses on here. If you're an F, you're an F. You failed. That's it. But to start with Group A, Mexico A plus, South Africa B, South Korea D, and Czechia F. Now, what I'll preface this with is I only have four teams within this tournament at an A plus level. So Mexico, ironically, as the first team on this list, giving them an A plus seems a little, it's a little bit of a fallacy to think there's going to be a lot of these on this list. But Mexico, A plus in this group, no goals allowed for Mexico. And on top of that, they won all three games against South Africa, South Korea, and Czechia. Particularly that first game against South Africa was very impressive out of Mexico as the host at home to start the tournament off the way they did against South Africa. Certainly an impressive performance, and then not losing another game, not conceding a goal throughout this group stage at the World Cup as host. Got to give them an A plus in this circumstances. They are, again, one of four teams. Mexico is one of four teams earning an A plus ranking from me in this World Cup. However, South Africa, South Korea, and Czechia in Group A. South Africa and South Korea, it really, at the end of the day, it was that last game between those two that determined their grades. South Africa gets a B in this circumstance. South Africa, if you look at what they did in this tournament, they lost to Mexico. They beat South Korea and they tied Czechia, but South Africa and South Korea playing that last game in the group stage. South Korea, very disappointing tournament for them. They lost their match against South Africa to make the round of 32. That was a winner go home scenario for South Korea. They lose in that scenario. And looking at this group, it felt like Mexico and South Korea were going to be the two that came out of this group, yet South Korea needed to come back from down 1-0 to Czechia. They won that game 2-1, but then after that, they lose to Mexico, they lose to South Africa, and they just really didn't do much at the World Cup outside of score in the second half versus Czechia, and that's why I give South Korea a D. And South Africa, a B because of their ability to rebound. And of course, win that last match against South Korea, which propelled South Africa to the second place in the group. And not only that, the round of 32, which was huge in this tournament. For Czechia, this is an F performance for me because Czechia, they tie South Africa, they lose to South Korea and Mexico. I really thought Czechia was going to be much tougher of an opponent for some of these teams, especially a team like Mexico, where I think Czechia might have a physical advantage over a Mexican team, or any of these teams, South Korea, South Africa as well. Yet Czechia, they come out with 1 point, -4 goal differential, and to me, you could give them a D minus, okay, but I'm gonna give them an F here. I'm gonna be a little harsh on Czechia. I expected a little bit more out of a team that's, let's face it, in European tournaments, done a little bit better than they came out here at the World Cup. Moving on to Group B. Group B, very interesting, and I feel like I'm going to have a biased selection within this group, and everybody's going to know exactly what country it is, but Switzerland, giving them a B plus at the top of the group. Canada, solid C. Bosnia and Herzegovina, A minus. How about that? Maybe, people might have something to say about that, but that's okay. Qatar, D plus. Now, explaining this group, Switzerland was on the brink of an A. If you really look at the entirety of Switzerland's performance, they really took it to Bosnia-Herzegovina in the second half of that game. They tied Qatar in their first game, then they beat Canada. And to me, Switzerland, they were head and shoulders above the rest of these teams in this group. But that one tie to Qatar, that should have never happened. And for Qatar, I give them a D plus in this situation precisely because of that Switzerland game. And let's see, Qatar, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm going to go check this real quick. Qatar, only 1 point. I have on my list they had 2 points at this tournament. So only 1 point for Qatar. So that game against Switzerland, ultimately giving them a D plus, wouldn't propel them into the C category. Rough games against Canada and Bosnia. Both of those games, Qatar was just absolutely whooped, and that's what brings a little bit of question as to how Switzerland. How is it a 1-1 matchup? I mean, it was Switzerland's first game at this World Cup, Qatar's as well. Sometimes you need to settle into the tournament before you really reach your peak as a team. But in Group B, Switzerland, deducting them a letter grade here, giving them a B plus. They're all around repertoire in this group, or their resume. They took care of Canada. They took care of Bosnia. They should have taken care of Qatar. They did not in their first game. Left them in a little bit of a moment of questioning for sure going into the second and third games, but they cleaned up their business. B plus for them, to me, seems very correct. Qatar, D plus, putting them up because of that tie against Switzerland. Very impressive for Qatar, and that's going to be a moment in which they look back at in the future. Qatari football will go, this is what we built off of going to the 2026 World Cup. Of course, they're at the 2022 World Cup as well as host, but the last two World Cups, especially this one, you tie a Swiss team. And now, if you're Qatar, you're looking at the next tournament. How can we attain more of those results, essentially? Bosnia, I'm giving an A minus here, and this is going to be the bias selection. You know, the Bosnian march parties. They've been absolutely incredible. But looking at Bosnia in this situation, I'm giving them an A minus because they barely made the tournament. All right, they knocked out. You know, in international soccer, I support the Italians. I'm an Italian American. I'm just gonna support the Italians no matter what in soccer, especially just the history of that of their football program. But ultimately, Bosnia knocks out Italy to make the World Cup and make it out of the UEFA bracket. In this situation, Bosnia barely makes the World Cup, yet they're going to the round of 32. They come out with 4 points. They whooped Qatar in their last game, in which they needed to win in order to make the round of 32. They tied Canada. And what was so impressive about that game, you think about those two games, you need to win if you're Bosnia in that last game against Qatar. They do. And against Canada in their first game, you're playing the hosts on their home soil. One of the three hosts, of course, the United States, Canada, Mexico, but Canada on their home soil. Bosnia comes up with a tie, and that was kind of a spoiler because Mexico, great first game against South Africa. The United States, great first game against Paraguay. Those two hosts took care of business, and then Canada, they tied Bosnia, and it kind of felt like a little bit of a letdown for Canadian fans after that first game. So Bosnia getting an A minus from me here because they barely made the tournament, yet here they are in the round of 32. And in order to make it there, they really had to play some tough football and win circumstantially or even tie in spots in which people didn't really expect them to. Now, of course, they were, I would say, Bosnia and Switzerland, much more competitive game than people give credit for. It was a 4-1 Switzerland win, but Bosnia was tied 0-0 until the 75th minute. And then Switzerland really put it on. Bosnia stole a goal at the end, and then, of course, unfortunately allowed a penalty to Canada to make it 4-1. Or not Canada, my bad, Switzerland in this situation. A lot of red teams in this group. But Canada, I'm giving a C because Canada, really all they did was beat Qatar, just beat the brakes off Qatar. I mean, that really felt like the rebound game where they tie Bosnia, they go and play Qatar. They know they need to play a good game on their home soil, and they do. And that was impressive for the Canadian team, no doubt, to rebound from that weird tie incident against Bosnia. But then in the last game, they lose to Switzerland and Canada. It just feels like, okay, they didn't impress at this tournament whatsoever, but it's not as if they completely failed. They finished second in the group. A solid C here does it for me with Canada. Again, losing, I shouldn't say losing, but rather drawing that first game against Bosnia, taking a little bit off, a little steam off their grade here, no doubt. But Group B, Switzerland B plus, Canada C, Bosnia and Herzegovina A minus, and Qatar a D plus. And those Bosnian watch parties, oof, over in Bevo Mill. I'm so glad. I mean, Bosnia round of 32. Congrats. Congrats. But going down to Group C, and looking at Group C, we all thought Brazil was going to top this group easily, in which they sort of did. But Morocco, if you look at it, Morocco and Brazil, got to give them both A's here because they basically own the same resume. They tied each other, both with 7 points in the group, plus 3 goal differentials, both of them, and they both handled Scotland and Haiti. So there's really not much of a difference there between Brazil and Morocco. Yes, you'd say Brazil is the more skilled team, the more talented team. But Morocco, they entered the tournament as 11th best odds on favorite to win the whole thing. So you can't look past Morocco. And of course, they're a semifinals team from 2022. And Morocco definitely showed their tactical talent and their defensive talent, their ability to possess the ball and attack in that first game against Brazil. They scored early against Brazil, really started the World Cup off for them in a great way, eventually tied that game 1-1. So Morocco in this situation, a little bit more impressive than Brazil. You'd say you'd expect them to be atop this group, although Brazil and Morocco, they're not as far apart as people would expect. Historically, you'd think, oh yeah, Brazil, they're light years ahead of Morocco, but it's not like that anymore. It's really not. Like Brazil is what? Fifth, sixth, seventh to win the entire thing, and Morocco's 10, 11, 12. I mean, they're not too far apart in terms of actual talent, specifically at this World Cup in 2026. And they have the same resume here, 7 points plus 3 goal differential. They tie each other and they handled their other two group members in Scotland and Haiti. But going down the group, Scotland, giving them a D here. They didn't really do much in this World Cup. They beat Haiti. Congrats to them. They scored an early goal, didn't score again, and then just lost to Brazil and Morocco. Didn't do much there. A D for Scotland. People were hoping the Scottish would come in, do a little bit more at this tournament, but just didn't. Haiti, have to give them an F because 0 points, -6 goal differential, and they lost to Scotland, which we talked about this when it happened. When Haiti lost to Scotland, it felt like, oh, that was really their one chance to earn some points at this 2026 World Cup. Yet they lose that game. They concede a goal early, never score again. Then there's an uphill climb against Brazil and Morocco for a country like Haiti, which is just, it seems almost impossible, an insurmountable task. This was almost not a group of death, but you look at the top two teams, Brazil and Morocco, definitely head and shoulders above Scotland and Haiti. And at the end of the day, when Haiti loses to Scotland and needs to play Brazil and Morocco to finish out the group, going to be very hard to gain a point there. So unfortunately, Haiti walks away with an F for me and 0 points from this tournament. And we saw it coming. That first game against Scotland was crucial for Haiti, and they fortunately did not execute. And that's a theme of the World Cup and the European Championships, Copa America, any tournament. Sometimes is that first game can really be the key game for some teams because you might have an uphill battle to climb if you don't take care of that first game. But speaking of great first games, the United States played a phenomenal first game against Paraguay in their Group D matchup to kick off the tournament. It was a 4-1 affair against Paraguay. And therefore, the United States in Group D coming away with a B plus, Australia a B minus, Paraguay a B minus, and Turkey a D. Now, the United States given a B plus, there was a chance the United States was going to be in A or even A plus category. They lost to Turkey, and I almost feel bad giving them a degradation. And Germany has scored in extra time. Nice. I almost feel bad for giving the United States a B plus in this situation because really that last game against Turkey didn't affect anything. The United States and Bosnia, that matchup was already solidified going into that US Turkey game, and therefore there wasn't any reason for the United States to play their full top line. They're fully healthy, their best lineup. The United States, they really played most of their bench guys in that game, and they lost to Turkey. They conceded a late goal, could have tied in that situation, wound up with 7 points. They wind up with 6 instead. I'm giving them a B plus. They really took it to Paraguay in that first game, really took it to Australia, and then Turkey just let go of the rope there. I almost feel like the United States, you could boost them into A category, but B plus is where I feel as if they belong here just because the last game against Turkey, they really could have drawn in that situation. They conceded one at the end. Still got to, even if it's the bench guys, still got to rank the team as the team regardless. Australia and Paraguay. Now, giving them B minuses here, it feels a little generous because Australia, they took, and basically both of these teams, United States, Australia, and Paraguay, they all make the round of 32. For Australia and Paraguay, they're sitting there clapping their hands because they're going, I mean, how did we even, all we had to do was beat Turkey. And that's exactly what happened. Both of these teams, they beat Turkey. And that's exactly why they're in the round of 32, because otherwise they play each other, they tie, and then they play the United States and get their brakes blown off. So Australia and Paraguay, similar resumes. both beat Turkey, drew each other, and then the United States couldn't handle the United States and lost to the United States. So both of them, they make the round of 32, but their path there, all they had to do was beat Turkey. So I feel as if Australia and Paraguay, the fact that they were able to come back from the United States bludgeonings, right? Specifically the if you look at Paraguay, the 4-1 bludgeoning to start the tournament, the fact they're in the round of 32, impressive enough, I feel, as if to give them both B and B minuses. And even Australia, that Turkey game, weren't expected to win that Turkey game, yet they do 2-0. I felt as if those two teams, the fact they were able to rebound in this tournament, specifically Paraguay rebounding, but then Australia coming out playing well early, I feel as if that gives them the credibility to be within the B category and at a B minus. I wouldn't say it's a spectacular B, but a B minus nonetheless. Turkey a D. I wouldn't. They were very much on the brink of receiving an F. A lot of us expected a lot more out of Turkey. We all know the talent on the Turkish roster. Looking at the group, you're in a group, if you're Turkey with the United States, Australia, Paraguay, you think you have a chance because Turkey, in this instance, they're getting a D from me because they beat the US bench at the end when it didn't matter, of course, but you saw the ability out there on the field when Turkey beat the United States 3-2. If Turkey just brought that same level of play to the Australian or the Paraguayan game, they would have been in the round of 32. And they come out with 3 points. And that's ultimately, if you look at either one of those games, right? Turkey loses to Paraguay, loses to Australia. If Turkey drew in either one of those games, they're in the round of 32, most likely right now. They would be they would be somewhere on the line, but much better chance, obviously, than going into the last match day already eliminated, which when Turkey left the country, there was a huge uproar for them, deservedly so. Yet, just it didn't transpire into anything at the World Cup. And I give them a D because they played the United States, beat the United States. But Australia and Paraguay, if you draw, I mean, really, you would expect Turkey to at least draw against Australia and Paraguay. You beat the United States, all of a sudden, Turkey's second in the group with 5 points. Instead, you allow 2 goals to the Australians in the first game, and then Paraguay, you lose to them by the time you actually beat the United States. Sure, doesn't even mean anything for Turkey. So they're getting a D in this situation. Going to Group E, Germany A minus, Ivory Coast A, Ecuador C plus, and Curacao D. Now Germany A minus, they lost to Ecuador in the last game, although the last game wasn't much to play for Germany. They had already I believe in the last match day they had pretty well already clinched the group. Yes, because they beat the Ivory Coast and Ecuador. Yeah, so Germany had already clinched the group on the last match day on match day 3. But Germany, they lost to Ecuador. Otherwise, they're getting an A plus. They absolutely blew out Curacao. There was a late goal against the Ivory Coast. They didn't play particularly well in that game, but they got the job done. And then Ecuador, they score early, but then concede 2 goals afterwards and allow Ecuador into the round of 32, which is interesting here. But Germany A minus. Some people could argue for a B plus there just because of the loss to Ecuador and the close game against the Ivory Coast. But when you blow out Curacao 7-1 to start the tournament, Germany was serious about the World Cup. I mean, there was a moment there at the beginning of the Curacao game where you go, whoa, 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 it's 1-1 here. Curacao levels it out. But after those 18 minutes, Germany pulled ahead. We all saw it. Seven goals for Germany and 6 of them after it was 1-1 unanswered. So Germany, just for that performance alone, going to boost their standing, but they beat the Ivory Coast. They score first against Ecuador. They topped the group, and there wasn't a lot of drama for Germany, it felt like, in this particular situation. So A minus for Germany. The Ivory Coast, they're getting an A for me here because if you really look at their line of work in this group, they challenged Germany in that game, no doubt. I mean, it felt like the Ivory Coast could have won that game, then they could have tied that game, then they lost that game, unfortunately. But then they go out, they beat Ecuador in their first game, which was kind of a surprise. I mean, that was a 0-0 match for most of the match. And then all of a sudden, Ivory Coast scores a late goal. They win that one. They steal it from Ecuador. And then they take on Curacao their last game. They beat Curacao, and that's a team ultimately, I mean, there's some teams in here where it almost feels like a free win in some instances, although Curacao, we'll get to the Ecuador side of this. Not quite a free win for Ecuador, but the Ivory Coast, they take care of Curacao, they take care of Ecuador, they challenge Germany, they almost top this group. So for them to come into the tournament, they did exactly what you'd expect them to do, and even more so against Germany. So for me, A for the Ivory Coast, and they make the round of 32 as the second place finisher in Group E. Ecuador getting a C plus for me. They do make the round of 32, but this is a little bit of a back and forth with Ecuador. They give up that late goal against the Ivory Coast, which wasn't great for them at all. And it felt like after the second game, for sure, they tie Curacao. For sure, they weren't going to make the round of 32. Yet they come out against Germany in a must win game. They concede a goal early. I mean, it was the first 5 minutes of the match, and then they score two themselves the next 90 minutes and win that crucial match and propel themselves into the round of 32. So there's two sides of Ecuador here. C plus might be a little bit generous, but I was really impressed by the way in which they played Germany at the end of that contest because that was a must win for Ecuador. They really screwed up in terms of allowing a late goal to the Ivory Coast, tying Curacao, which was just insane after Curacao lost to Germany 7-1. And then in that last game, they beat Germany ultimately. So, not that impressive of a record for Ecuador to start, but the fact they were able to rebound and put themselves in the round of 32, got to give them some brownie points there. Now, Curacao giving them a solid D. Anytime you lose 7-1, I mean, they came away from this tournament 1 point, -8 goal differential. They lost to the Ivory Coast. They lost to Germany. Obviously, Germany that game, and even the Ivory Coast. I mean, it's very decidedly for both Germany and the Ivory Coast. But Ecuador, they tie Ecuador and nearly mess up Ecuador's entire World Cup run here. And the fact that Curacao was able to do that against a nation not too far away from themselves in the same hemisphere, gives them a little validity and in their soccer program building over the years and maybe even being the spot once again. The fact that they're able to take on such an opponent like Ecuador and actually challenge them and come away with the tie, got to give them a D in this situation. Curacao very much on the brink of coming away with an F if they don't get that result. They were going to come away with 0 points and a goal differential that did not look great. But the fact they're able to tie Ecuador in that situation, mightily impressive for Curacao. So they get a D from me. Going to Group F, this was one of the more, I don't want to say interesting groups, but it was slightly competitive, more competitive than one would have thought. And some of these groups, what's interesting is they were competitive, and you think the team in which it's the favorite for the group. You go, oh, like you don't know about them, right? They come out on top anyway. That's kind of how it felt for Group F with the Netherlands, where they tied Japan in their first game, and then they beat Sweden, they beat Tunisia, and they come out on top of the group. I'm giving the Netherlands a B plus in this situation, Japan a B, Sweden a C, and Tunisia an F. For me, the Netherlands with a B plus. If you don't tie Japan, you're easily in that A category here. But to concede that late goal against Japan, I think that could actually make the Netherlands better as the tournament moves on, a little more motivated. I mean, Virgil van Dijk in that situation, when you there's a team of 6'4" Dutch players, defenders out there versus a bunch of 5'8" Japanese guys. I mean, a cross and a corner into a header to win the game, or I shouldn't say win the game, but to tie the game 2-2 in that situation, that's just ultimately the Netherlands can't allow that to happen because when you look at the tournament, those kind of mistakes can really ruin a team's tournament. The Netherlands very very lucky that it did not coming into the tournament. They only earned that 1 point when it very much felt like they were on their way to 3 points against Japan. But Japan cannot look past them. They're a quality team as well, not as quality as the Netherlands, but at the same time, still played the Netherlands well, came out with a tie, and ultimately the Netherlands took care of the rest of their opponents in this group. So B plus seems right for me. The Netherlands were head and shoulders above the rest of this group, but the fact that you concede that late goal to Japan, got to give a letter. I got to degrade a letter for that one. Japan giving a B in this situation. They tied the Netherlands. They tied Sweden, and they whooped up on Tunisia. So Japan, not the most impressive of runs, but I felt like it was solid. I mean, they when it came to Tunisia, they absolutely ripped them apart. And the Netherlands, their toughest matchup, they tie, and Sweden in a game where both teams make it through. And it was that game between Japan and Sweden. Whoever whoever achieved the result, one way or the other, the choice was Brazil or France. So in that game between Japan or Sweden, they were just content on, let's both make the round of 32, and one of us is going to play France, one of us is going to play Brazil. Both of these teams are tough. Probably want to play Brazil over France, although it's not too far of a gap. But both of those teams, I don't want to say in lose-lose situations in that last game, but there wasn't much to play for, and both drew in that second half. It was 0-0 going into halftime, then 1-1 at the end of that game. So Japan a B. They again two ties and a absolute whooping of Tunisia. Sweden, on the other hand, they whoop Tunisia, and then ultimately they lose to the Netherlands. They tie Japan, and that's what sets apart Japan and Sweden in this situation. Is they're similar. They tied each other and both beat up on Sweden, but the results against the Netherlands, Japan tied the Netherlands 2-2, and Sweden straight up lost to the Netherlands. So Sweden giving them a C in this category. And then Tunisia at the bottom of the group, an F. Unfortunately, 0 points, a -10 goal differential for Tunisia. Really, they were just one of the worst teams in this tournament, and it showed. On to Group G. Group G was the land of misfit toys, it felt like at times, where you just look at the entire group and go, I don't really know who's supposed to be the favorite here. I supposed to be Belgium. Do I really believe Belgium's above any of these teams? Not really right now. And this was one of the lowest graded groups in the entire tournament for me. Belgium walks away with a C minus, Egypt a C plus, Iran a C minus, and New Zealand a D minus. So low grades there in this group. Belgium a C minus. They basically just beat New Zealand to win the group because otherwise they tied Egypt, they tied Iran, didn't do anything special in those games. But hey, you beat New Zealand, so congratulations on that one. Egypt C plus. They tied Belgium, which was, if you look at it, it's much more impressive for Egypt to tie Belgium than Belgium to tie Egypt in that situation. And then Egypt, they, let's see, so Egypt, I believe, they beat New Zealand and they tied Iran. So they tied Iran, beat New Zealand, tied Belgium. So similar resume from Belgium. Similar resume compared to Belgium in this situation. But you'd say Egypt tying in that situation would be a little more impressive. Therefore, they're getting the C plus, and Belgium's receiving the C minus here. Iran also receiving a C minus. 3 ties, never lost, but didn't make the round of 32. Held on to the very end. They were the last team right until the last moment when Algeria, Algeria and Austria, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Algeria and Austria played a crazy game at the end of the group stage, and it basically took Iran in and out of the tournament 5 or 6 different times throughout the game. But unfortunately, Iran finishes outside of the round of 32, 3 points, tied against Belgium, tied against Egypt, and really the C minus, you could take it almost down to a D considering Iran, they're in that round of 32 if they just beat New Zealand, which does take me to that team. D minus for New Zealand. Very close to an F here, but they did tie Iran. And it's a little different because some of these other teams, say for example, Curacao with a D, and who else? Qatar with the D plus. Their ties are just more impressive than, say, New Zealand, who tied Iran. And that was an impressive game considering Iran was out shooting New Zealand. They're out possessing New Zealand. But then at the end of the day, if you really look at it, New Zealand, they scored 2 crazy goals in that game, and it's 2-2. And Iran kicking themselves after that one because New Zealand was supposed to be a free win. When unfortunately that was not the case in that first game at SoFi. But New Zealand giving a D minus here, Iran a C minus, Egypt a C plus, and again Belgium a C minus in this situation. And Belgium fans, I just got to say, Belgium fans got to be kicking themselves right now because Belgium really just exited their contending window. Yet this might be one of the easier paths to, I want to say, a World Cup, but let's face it, probably more like the quarterfinals for Belgium they've ever had at the World Cup. In this group of Egypt, Iran, New Zealand, and then you go to the round of 32. If you look at the round of 32, Belgium has Senegal in round one. The United States are Bosnia in round two. And then eventually they're going to get Spain, Austria, Portugal, and Croatia in the quarters if they do make it that far. But ultimately, that quarterfinal is going to be tough for Belgium if they do make it that far. But Senegal, United States, Bosnia, on top of the group they just played, which was, again, Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand, that's a pretty easy path for Belgium yet. They're not in their contending window anymore. No one really believes Belgium's built to beat a team like Spain or France or any of those teams out here yet. The path to actually making it to that matchup, much, much easier for Belgium than at any point in time in the past at the World Cup during their golden generation. So unfortunate for Belgium fans, but we'll see. Belgium, no, you don't know how far they're going to go here. We don't know. Going to Group H, this group was another one of those groups where you think Spain not playing that well, yet they come out on top of the group, no problem. And Spain leads off with a B. Cape Verde, the next A plus team. So remember at the beginning, I said Mexico A plus. There won't be too many A pluses here. This is our next A plus going down the list. We're 20 plus teams in right now. But Cape Verde A plus for me, Uruguay an F, and Saudi Arabia a D plus. And you can see the duality in the World Cup tournament between Uruguay and Cape Verde when you see an A plus and an F in the same group right next to each other from spots 2 and 3. But Spain ultimately a B. You'd put Spain in the A category if they simply beat Cape Verde. They were just able to score 1 goal, 2 goals against Cape Verde. They would be in the A category. Yet no goals against Cape Verde. Got to degrade them a letter to B, and even a just solid B. No B plus, any of that for Spain. When you no goals against Cape Verde, just Spain did not look right in that game, and it really put questions to Spain's name on whether or not they could really beat the best teams at this tournament looking the way they did. Very slow, lethargic, too patient in that game. But we'll preface that too with it was their first game of the World Cup. Sometimes teams need to settle in, which is exactly what Spain did the rest of the time when they whooped Saudi Arabia, they whooped Uruguay in the last game, and they won the group pretty comfortably. The +5 goal differential and 7 points. The next team in the group, Cape Verde, finished second in the group, only 3 points. And Cape Verde, an A plus in this situation, they're making their World Cup debut. They haven't lost. Cape Verde has not lost yet. They did not lose to Spain, 0-0 draw there. They play Uruguay. They're down multiple times in that game. They come back, they tie it up 2-2, they draw that game. And then Saudi Arabia, they don't concede one there. They don't score one there. 3 ties for Cape Verde, and they're through with a +0 goal differential. 3 points and a +0 goal differential. I have +0 on my an even goal differential. I'm saying +0. I'm reading it off my sheet here, but A plus for Cape Verde, making your World Cup debut and you didn't lose in the group stage. And you made the round of 32. Mighty impressive for Cape Verde to come out and do what they did at the 2026 World Cup. And their World Cup run is not over yet. As for Uruguay, their World Cup run is over as Uruguay is receiving an F here because if you're looking at this group, you're going, how Uruguay and Saudi Arabia, how are you not in the round of 32? Because specifically Uruguay, they lose to Spain, they draw Saudi Arabia in their first game, and unfortunately, they also draw Cape Verde. They only come away with 2 points. Looking at that, you'd expect if you're Uruguay, you're going to lose to Spain. Okay, Spain's one of the favorites in the tournament. You're not surprised if you lose that matchup, in which they did. They lost it pretty handily too. Fortunately, in their last game when they needed to win. But the Cape Verde and Saudi Arabia games, if you win either one of those games, you're likely through. If you're Uruguay with 4 points instead, they draw both of those. It's the only 2 points in the tournament for them, and that's it. They're going home. There's no round of 32. They weren't one of the best 8 third place teams with only 2 points and a -1 goal differential, and you're looking at it going, this is a team who won the World Cup. in the past. I mean, a long time ago. Okay, in a totally different age of time, but this is a World Cup winning country, and to come out with only 2 points when you're in a group with Cape Verde and Saudi Arabia, and again, Spain's at the top, but those other two games, if you're just able to grab one of those two, especially against Cape Verde in that second game when you score 2 goals, yet you concede two, it's an easy F for me for Uruguay because you're looking at this group going, how? I mean, even as a you're making it as a first or second place team into the round of 32, point blank, and we're expecting Uruguay to be first or second in this group. Period. Even as a third place team, you own a chance. And in this group, you think, oh, Uruguay, maybe enough goals, enough points as a third place team. No, not even close. Not even close points wise. So a clear F for me for Uruguay. And then Saudi Arabia, they receive a D plus. Wasn't as egregious as Uruguay, but they're just whooped by Spain. They draw to Cape Verde in a must-win game at the end of the group stage. So that's definitely going to take them down a prong, no doubt. I mean, they finished last in the group, 2 points as well. But they tie Uruguay in this situation. And I thought there was a little bit of an impressive nature to that game for Saudi Arabia to start out the World Cup. But afterwards, we all know what happened. They lose 4-0 to Spain. And then in a must win game against Cape Verde in their last group stage game, they're not able to score a goal. So a D plus for Saudi Arabia. Some could argue a D minus, or even an F for this, but I still see that first game against Uruguay. There's some weight to that game for Saudi Arabia, which is why I would put the plus on the D. But otherwise, when there's a must-win game against Cape Verde in front of you to make the round of 32 at the World Cup and you draw 0-0, not amazing. Not amazing. Four more groups here, folks. Four more. Going down to Group I. France, another A plus team in this tournament. Norway, B plus. Senegal, C minus. And Iraq, F, unfortunately for Iraq. But France, they just handled their group. No doubt in any of the games. I mean, Senegal for about 70 minutes, it was 0-0. And we were all questioning what's going on with France. But it was the first 70 minutes of their tournament. I believe it was actually 65 minutes, whatever it was. But regardless, the first 65 minutes of France's tournament was like, oh, whoa, they might draw against Senegal. They might even lose. Like Senegal was coming up with a couple of opportunities there. But France turned up to another gear at the end, won that game 3-1. A couple of Mbappe goals, Barcola just going crazy, showing their skill at the end of that one. Conceded one, unfortunately, but I wouldn't really look into any of that because most of the group, there was never a doubt against Norway, who unfortunately was not playing Holland in that game. Iraq wasn't even close. So France, A plus for me, 9 points, plus 8 goal differential. So far, France, I would say you'd have to call them the best team in this tournament. Coming into the tournament, Spain and France led the way within the odds markets for favorites in which could win the World Cup. Right now, I would have France firmly at the top of that group, firmly ahead of Spain, no doubt. As for the other groups, or rather the other teams in this group, Norway a B plus. What's interesting about Norway is they conceded 7 goals in this group, and you'd think Norway, like it just felt like they had an impressive showing in the group. They beat Iraq, they beat Senegal, and they challenged France a little bit without Holland. Now, that one's just a tough spot for Norway when you're missing literally one of the best footballers in the world, one of the best finishers around the net in the world against the best team in the world. Like, pretty tough matchup to come out with in that situation. And, a little, I'm like, why, man? Why was Holland out for that game? We were robbed of a Holland versus Mbappe World Cup matchup in the group stage. These things don't come around very often, folks, and we were robbed of that moment. Two great soccer players, all-time great soccer players, facing off at the World Cup in the group stage. Didn't happen. So Norway, they handled Iraq, handled Senegal. They lose to France, but I'll say about Norway is they conceded 7 goals, and you think they were pretty impressive. I felt as if they were pretty impressive throughout their 3 games, but you look at their goal differential and you go, how are they only a +1? feels like they blew out Iraq. Yeah, sure, they conceded a couple to Senegal, then they lose to France. And you go, how did it's like I guess the math adds up there because otherwise you think Norway, like they had a pretty good tournament in terms of scoring themselves. I mean, they're still +1 goal differential. They conceded 7 goals, so they scored 8 themselves. But Norway, I'm solid B plus there. They were almost in the A category if they were able to play a little bit better against France there at the end, even without Holland. I would say they were almost in the A category, but B plus feels right for Norway. Senegal, C minus. Senegal, they're in the round of 32. Congrats to Senegal. That's their whole goal here. But the path to making it there, 3 points, +2 goal differential. They lost to France, lost to Norway, and just absolutely took it to Iraq 5-0 in their last game to make the round of 32. So Senegal really, to me, hasn't done much in this tournament yet. They are where they are. And this is part of the whole Belgium conversation, too, is Belgium's facing Senegal in the round of 32 in round one. And I look at that and go, yeah, Belgium, how are you getting Egypt, Iran, New Zealand, and now Senegal on top of what could be the United States or Bosnia until you face maybe Spain, Croatia, Portugal, or Austria afterwards? But part of the Belgium equation, too, where Senegal's facing Belgium now. Those are just two, I mean, both of those C minus teams in the group stage for me, but particularly Senegal. All they needed to do was beat Iraq 5-0 in order to make it to the round of 32. And yes, they needed to win that game in the last day of the group stage, the last match day, and they did. So there's a reason as to why they are given a C here, but Senegal really didn't do that much. And they lost their first 2 games, and they're thinking, all right, well, we're out of here. And then they beat Iraq and, of course, drive up the goal differential in that one, and all of a sudden they're in the round of 32. And that's the unfortunate part is you look at a Senegal in this situation, it's like it feels like they just sneaked into the round of 32 versus others, like an Ecuador, for example. Well, Ecuador snuck in. I'm thinking of who am I thinking of right now? South Korea and Iran and Uruguay, where you're thinking, those teams didn't play too utterly horrendous. Although Uruguay, maybe you can add them to the list, but yet they don't make it in this situation. So just matters which group you're in. Iraq, absolutely demolished. An F here, a -11 goal differential, 0 points for Iraq. Just a tough group for Iraq to be in. France, Norway, Senegal just didn't really do anything in this tournament. And they're on a list of teams that were kind of a free win at this tournament within the group stage for certain teams, for certain opponents of that team, of course. Going down to Group J, Argentina, another A plus team right here, which I believe that is our last A plus team, if I'm not mistaken. So just to reveal the A plus teams, Argentina, France, Cape Verde, and Mexico. So congratulations to those 4 teams on ranking the highest out of anybody out of the group stage. But going down to Group J, focusing on that group, A plus for Argentina, Austria a C, Algeria a C, and Jordan an F. Argentina, 1 goal allowed. Very easy group for Argentina. Austria, Algeria, Jordan didn't have any problems against any 3 of these teams. There was no drama for Argentina. 9 points, +7 goal differential, and just an A plus. I mean, there's no, you can't. I mean, even for the entertainment side of it, Messi. I mean, Leo Messi has scored in every single game so far. I believe in every single game so far, if I'm not mistaken. But Messi putting on a performance in all these games as well, regardless. And Argentina, it's just great all around. They're winning ball games. They're not conceding goals. Messi is scoring. There's just nothing bad to say about Argentina right now. Just like there's nothing bad to say about France or even Mexico at this point in time. Austria and Algeria, they almost go hand in hand here because they're both given a C. Now, Austria, an even goal differential in this situation. Algeria, -2 goal differential. But if you look at their resumes, they both lost to Argentina. Okay. They both beat Jordan in this situation. And Jordan, unfortunately, with an F here, as Jordan, another one of those teams in this tournament where it's kind of a free win for teams like Argentina, Austria, and Algeria here. Jordan, 0 points, -5 goal differential. But they both beat Jordan, Austria, and Algeria. And then they play each other and they tie. So pretty much the same resume for both of those teams where they lose to Argentina, they beat Jordan, and they tie each other. So to me, when there are a couple teams on here with similar resumes, such as Austria and Algeria, and you go up the list, Brazil and Morocco, where at the end you go, there's not really much that's separating these teams. When you look at the resume, they both lost to this team, they both beat this team, they both tie against each other. All right, moving on to our last two groups here. Going down to Group K, Colombia A, Portugal C, the DR Congo A, Uzbekistan F. Unfortunately for Uzbekistan, all my Uzbeks out there, unfortunately an F with Uzbekistan with the team. But Colombia coming away with an A. If you look at Colombia's entire resume, they beat Uzbekistan, they beat the DR Congo, they tied Portugal in their last game when them and Portugal were likely already through to the round of 32. They both take a tie in that game, but Colombia, they came through, really handled their business in the first two games. They came out against Portugal and actually looked like the better team. They held possession for for a higher percentage of the match and actually appeared as if they were the best team in the group when a lot of people thought Portugal was that team. But Portugal, that's why they receive a C in this situation. Portugal to me didn't really do much in this group at all when you'd expect them to outside of the Colombia game, which was always going to be a tough matchup for Portugal. You'd expect them to come away with at least 6 points in this group, with the DR Congo and Uzbekistan sitting there. Yet Portugal, they come out with 5 points in this group because you look at it, they basically only beat Uzbekistan. They tied the DRC in their first game at the World Cup, 1-1, and that was really a very surprising result. That was one of the first surprising results at the World Cup, the first one. I mean, that came alongside the Spain Cape Verde result when that one was 0-0, and then Portugal drew against the DRC 1-1. Those were the two most surprising results at the beginning of the tournament. And Portugal, they tie the DRC, they tie Colombia, they don't win either one of those games. They whoop up on Uzbekistan, and they get a little bit of help in that game too from the officials. Let's not lie, but let's face it, they were going to win that game regardless. But Portugal, outside of beating Uzbekistan, who receives an F for basically being a free win in this group with a -9 goal differential and 0 points, Portugal didn't really do much in this group whatsoever. But Uzbekistan, looking at them on the end, they weren't really, I mean, I wouldn't say they were on the level of Tunisia or Jordan necessarily, but they, maybe they were, because not -9 goal differential wasn't close in any of these games. 3-1 to Colombia. I believe it was 4-0 or 5-0 against Portugal, and then the DRC. That was a game they were already eliminated. They could have played spoiler to the DRC, and the DRC came through and won that one. And that's why the Congo, got to give them, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC, got to give them an A here. They made the round of 32 in this situation in a group that, let's face it, Colombia and Portugal are sitting there going, you better hope you beat Uzbekistan because those are not going to be easy matchups. And they did, fortunately for themselves. They tie Portugal, they lose to Colombia, but that Uzbekistan game, must win game for them in the last group stage game. And give the DRC credit. They come out, they absolutely took it to Uzbekistan, especially in that second half. It was tied at 1 point, but they pushed the throttle forward. They actually came away with a crucial win there at the end, in which solidified their appearance in the round of 32 in that first game against Portugal. Mighty impressive for the DRC to come out in this World Cup and tie Portugal to start their entire World Cup and really propel themselves all the way to the round of 32 outside of Group K. Not an easy group to make it out of, even as a third place team for either Uzbekistan or the DRC, and the DRC, give them credit, were able to do so. And moving down to our last group, Group L, England, Croatia, Ghana, and Panama. England, B+, Croatia, B, Ghana, B-, and Panama, a D-. England, a B+, 7 points, really handled the group mostly. I mean, 4-2 against Croatia. They beat Panama in their last game. They tied Ghana. It wasn't the most impressive run for England, but you look at it, Croatia game, there were moments where we felt like Croatia could have tied that game, although at the end when it's 4-2, you're thinking, okay, England, they're able to score 4 goals in that one. And even the fourth goal, that was a goal in which you felt was important for their resume moving forward in terms of the perception of them, because they were trying to put away Croatia, and at the end of that game, they finally did. And that definitely boosts them a little bit in this group, no doubt. The Panama game tied for a long time in that one. I mean, Ghana and Panama, you'd expect England to run past those teams. Ghana, they tie 0-0. They look very conservative in that game. And then Panama, it was 0-0 for a large portion of the match. So you're looking at England in the middle of this group after beating Croatia 4-2, Ghana and Panama. There was what, a at least what, 130, 140, 50-minute stretch where England, they were just tying Ghana and Panama 0-0, didn't score a goal. They finally did in that second half against Panama and put themselves ahead in the group and won the group with 7 points, but too close at times for England for a favorite in this particular group. That's why I give them a B plus. They came out with 7 points. They came out with 2 wins and a draw. They never lost, so no real drama for England. They just didn't really look up to par the entirety of the group stage, I would say, even though they came out with mostly the results they wanted. Outside of that, they wanted that win against Ghana, unfortunately. But Croatia, giving them a B here. They lost to England, but they took care of Ghana and Panama, rebounded in the tournament. Solid B here because you lose that first game, you're looking at an uphill battle, but their next two opponents were their easier opponents. They handled both of them and ultimately came away with the second spot in this group and beat Ghana in a game that went back and forth, and Croatia came out with it second place in the group. Was that better or not? Because let's face it, is playing. Ghana will now be playing. Who is Ghana playing? Colombia in round one versus Croatia will be playing Portugal. So you could say, did it benefit Croatia to finish second in the group? Who knows? But we just talked about it last group. Colombia, they could, I mean, they looked like the better team versus Portugal, unfortunately, for Portugal, even as one of the tournament favorites. Didn't look like the best team in their group, unfortunately, for Portugal. But now Croatia will be taking on Portugal after they won those two games against Ghana and Panama. Ghana, a B minus here, made the round of 32, tied England. They lost to Croatia, but they won against Panama, and that was a crucial win. And that's going to split them and Panama here. Panama a D minus with 0 points and a -4 goal differential. Now, I thought Panama was actually one of the better 0 point teams at this tournament. There were several teams who wound up with 0 points: Panama, Uzbekistan, Jordan, Iraq. Who else here? Tunisia and Haiti. Believe that's it. Out of those teams, I did feel as if Panama was the best team. But that game against Ghana, the first game, it was supposed to be a 0-0 tie, yet in extra time. Ghana, I can still see the play in my head. Ghana, they get a ball, guy hustles down the field for it. Panama, guy on Panama tries to make a tackle, and Ghana ultimately, the guy on Ghana, he basically just, I mean, he won the race to that ball, and then the tackle goes awry. He gets a free swipe at crossing the ball over into the box. It's finished by an open runner, and Ghana, just by pure hustle in stoppage time of that game against Panama, they walk away with that win, and it's crucial for them to make the round of 32. So that was really a deciding, and we talked about that theme earlier, where that first game can really be that deciding game in your group stage play and whether or not you make the round of 32 or round of 16 at another tournament. But Ghana and Panama, that game decided which team was going to go through. Ultimately, if not, Panama wins that game. It's possible neither of those teams go through, but Ghana wins that game. They tie England. They give themselves 4 points. Then they do lose to Croatia, but at the same time, they already put themselves in a place to make the round of 32. That's why I have to give them a B minus here. At the end of the day, Panama a D minus, on the brink of an F, but I do consider, okay, so they were tied with England for a good portion of that game, and not too competitive against Croatia, but Ghana, that could have been a tie for Panama as well, and yet they give up a goal in stoppage time. I mean, that game could have gone either way. Panama, Ghana, I didn't feel as if one team was particularly over each other in that game. And that's why I do have to give Panama a little bit of boost and say, okay, circumstantially, they weren't a total failure. Even with 0 points, you'd say, yeah, they didn't achieve a result at the tournament. They were close twice against two somewhat quality teams, especially against England, and just didn't come out with it in stoppage time. So that for me has to be a D minus for Panama. So that concludes all of the group stage grades here. But just to go down the list before we hop off here, so here's who received at least an A. Let's just recap. Let's just recap here. In the A category, France A+, Argentina A+, Mexico A+, Cape Verde A+, Brazil A, Morocco A, Colombia A, the Ivory Coast A, the DRC A, Germany A-, and Bosnia-Herzegovina A-. Going down to the B category, the Netherlands B+, England B+, Switzerland B+, Spain B+, the United States B+, Norway B+, Croatia a B, Japan a B, South Africa a B, Australia B-, Paraguay B-, Ghana B-. Going down to the C category, Egypt C+, Portugal C, Canada C, Ecuador C, Austria C, Sweden C, Algeria C, Belgium C-, Senegal C-, Iran C- as well. And that takes us to the D category, where Saudi Arabia leads us off with a D+, Turkey D+, Qatar D+, South Korea a D, Scotland a D, Curacao a D, New Zealand D-, Panama D- as well. And unfortunately, at the end of this, the Fs. Uruguay F, Czechia F, Jordan F, Haiti F, Uzbekistan F, Tunisia F, and unfortunately at the end of this, Iraq an F. And Iraq with the worst goal differential in this tournament, unfortunately, for the Iraqis. But that is going to round out our 2026 World Cup group stage grades for all 48 teams. It only took us an hour here, and in between this hour, we did watch crazy Germany versus Paraguay round of 32 penalty shootout. So we'll have that for you guys as well. You know, some of the reactions I just gave from that, we'll have that out there for you guys as well. But that's going to do it for me here today on the Forever Green Sports Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, and do not forget to check out all of our social media links, Instagram, YouTube, where you're watching right now at Forever Green Sports. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Of course, folks, that's going to do it for me today. And as I always say, thank you all for watching, and go Forever Green, folks. Go Forever Green. I think we're going to have to pause here. We're going to pause at 46 as we're going to watch Paraguay versus Germany. Paraguay 3-2 up in this shootout. It's going to be France and Paraguay. Oh, he stopped. They're on the brink of progress. Here we go. Oh my goodness. If Paraguay makes this penalty. Oh my goodness. And it's another great save from the help. We are in the midst of a huge story developing in the World Cup. One of the favorites potentially on their way out. In his 50th cap, Antonio Sanabria with the kick of his life. Would it be a yes or a no to Paraguay? Oh, he missed it! Oh my God! Oh, he missed the entire net! If Paraguay loses, that is gonna be just, that is gonna haunt. It might haunt him anyway. Oh my goodness. Germany still has to make this one though, and still has to save the next one. Whew. Here we go. Germany stays alive. But Paraguay with another opportunity to win this. Woo! If Germany can come up with 3 straight results here, that would be huge opportunity. Paraguay. Oh my goodness. Paraguay right now. Oh. I was looking it up last night. There are only 7 million people who live in Paraguay. It's less than the amount of people who live in New York. Paraguay for the win! No! Manuel Neuer! Germany stays alive and we're still going. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Sudden death. Here we go. Woo! Oh, and he sailed it over the bar. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Paraguay for the win for the 3rd time. For the 3rd time, Paraguay for the win! Got it! Paraguay beats Germany! Oh. Why couldn't have this happened in 2014? Oh my goodness. Paraguay does it again. The World Cup darling, Paraguay. Wow. 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 And just when one thought Germany was going to survive, Paraguay finally comes through. But I'll say this for Germany. When you allow a team that many opportunities to put you away, I'm sorry, you deserve to lose. How many opportunities did Paraguay receive there to put Germany away? I believe 4. So we had what? The first kick that could have gone through, didn't for Paraguay. Then we have the save, didn't happen. Paraguay with another kick, it doesn't go through. And then in sudden death, Germany. Ta misses over the crossbar, and Paraguay puts it away for the win. Wow. What a penalty shootout. Whew. That is some classic soccer right there. Some classic football. And Germany going home early at the World Cup. There will be no Germany versus France matchup. Wow. Wow.